Hi, my name is Ram and welcome to the third episode in the series where we build real web application with React and Node.js live code style. In this session, what we're going to do is we mostly will focus on backend code to implement user authentication. So we will check if user credentials are correct, and then if they are, we send JSON Web Token to the client. And on the client today, we're going to implement the switching between login and logout links depending on the user authentication state. So there are a lot for us to do, so let's get started. First of all, in our backend code here, I haven't installed ESLint, haven't set it up, so let's do it right now, ESLint RC. I'm using the same configuration, I just remove this JSX because I do not need it, and I'm gonna install all of these packages as well. Another thing that I need to install is yarn add dev babel ESLint. Okay, so now if I go to, okay, I got a cat here. Here it is. Isn't she beauty, right? So now going back to our editor, if we go to index.js, we should have ESLint. Yes, it works, nice. So let's status it and commit ESLint setup. Okay. So now we need to install Mongoose. We're going to use Mongoose to communicate with our database. I suppose that you already installed MongoDB. If you're not, then pause this video and go to the official website and install it, or use Homebrew for that. So to install it, I'm going back to terminal, yarn add mongoose, and now I can connect it to the database. So here, I'm going to import mongoose from mongoose. And after that, I need to connect it. And what we did before was mongoose.connect, and then we provide the MongoDB URL, like localhost, and then the name of the database, bookworm. But now it's not enough. So if I save it and go back to terminal, you see here that this way is deprecated. So we need to pass, to fix this, we need to pass another option here, and it is called use Mongo client true, like this. And that's it. We connect it to our database. We don't even have it yet in the MongoDB, but that doesn't matter. That's MongoDB. It's very flexible in this way. So now in this route, API auth, we're going to extract it into a separate file. And there we will need to find user by email. So let's just delete it from here. And let's import user route from routes user. And next we use app.use and we mount it at API, oh, not user, auth. And we mount it into API auth like this. Okay, so now we need to create routes, auth.js file, and I have again the snippet for routes, the boilerplate. So we have express, we get the router, and then we export this router. And on this router, we can define any kind of routes we want. So for example, we need to have post, request and response. So now here we'll have constant credentials, then shells, that we get from request body, like this. And we can't do it right now this way because we do not have this request body, because in Express you need to have body parser to parse your body. So let's install it. We go back to terminal, yarn add body parser, and in index file we import body parser from body parser, and then when we instantiate application, we have app use body parser.json, because we're going to use only the JSON for now, so no need for other parsing to happen. So now here in our auth, we have credentials, and by these credentials have email and password, and we want to find user by email and then check that the password is the correct one. So for that, we need to create user model, user Mongoose model. So we'll use user from models user. And here then we can do something like this, find one by email, credentials email. Okay. And we will do it in a moment, but first let's define this user model. So let's go to models and create user.js file. So first of all, I need to import Mongoose. Oops. From Mongoose. And then I want to export default the model itself. And to have model, I export Mongoose model. And the first argument is the model name, it's user. And Mongoose will pluralize it, and it will be users. And this collection, this becomes the name of the collection that it will search in the MongoDB database. So that's user, and we'll need to define schema for this particular model. So let's define schema. It's new Mongoose schema, capital S. And here we just define it. So basically we have just two attributes right now. Email, that with the type of string, it is required, true. And let's add lowercase as well, true. So this way, no matter how you type your email, it will be transformed into lowercase. We also need to make sure that it is unique and that it is actual email. But for that, we need to install some plugins. We will leave it for now. So let's add here the comment to do, add uniqueness, and email validations to email field. Okay. Another thing that I can add is index to true, because email should be changed very seldomly, very rare, but it will be the main attribute by which we're going to find users. Okay, and another one is going to be password hash. And password hash is just the hash of the password. This is encrypted password. We never ever store passwords in our database. That's insane. What we do is we encrypt it with one-way encryption algorithm and store this encryption in our database. So this is what password hash. So the type string as well, and it is required as well, like this. And the second argument that we can provide is options, and for example, one of them is timestamps. True. So this way we're going to have created at, updated at, handled for us automatically. Nice. Let's save it. Here we go. We have our user model. So now in auth here, let's use it. And let's try to find email, user by email, and it will return promise. And there is one actual thing that I will tell you about the promise in a second. So, and it will take, it will process the user, and the user will be either null if nothing is found, or the record itself. So we can check if user, then we do something here, something useful, else we respond with status 400 and JSON to be errors global, errors global, let's say invalid credentials, like this. Okay, so let's have a look. Let's try it out. So when I try it, yeah, we have invalid credentials because there is even no database, bookworm database in my MongoDB right now. So now let's add some user, and for that we need to have email and password hash, and we're gonna hash it with Bcrypt. You can do it with Crypt library as well, but we will do it with Bcrypt as one of the way to do that. So let's yarn add Bcrypt to our project, and I also got this Bcrypt installed globally, so I can use it right now. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna run node, and in here I'm gonna have Bcrypt equals require Bcrypt. I want to get the hash for the password. So here is Bcrypt dot hash sync, and I want password 12345, let's say, and 10 is the salt round numbers, doesn't matter. Here is, we have our hash. So I'm gonna copy it, I'm gonna go quit the node, and now I'm going to Mongo. So what I want to do here is I want to use bookworm database, and inside of it I want to use db users, and I want to insert new record into it with email, my email ramchi@gmail.com, and password hash to be this thing here. Bam. Okay, right result, and inserted one. That means that we have record there, so we can check it with users that find like this. Here it is. We have only one user, and this is one, me, with my very secure password 12345. Okay, so I can exit right now. So now we have user. So if we find it in here, we'll have something like, let's just have a look that we actually do it. Success. True. So it has been found, right? So now we do not right now check for passwords yet. So if I do this like this, we have an error on the client side, that's okay, but what matters is in network here we have success true. So the user has been found with such email, the user has been found in the database. So this lookup thing works fine. The next thing that we need to do is to check passwords. Okay, so for that, let's go to our user model here, and let's define instance method on this model. And we can do it with schema methods, and then the name of the method is, for example, is valid password. So this function, that's going to be a function, function is valid password. It takes password, and it will return Boolean, true or false, depending on the result of the comparison of the hashes. And Bcrypt gives us this comparison. So we have to import Bcrypt from Bcrypt. And here I'll use Bcrypt compare sync. So synchronous compare. And I have password and then this password hash from the database. So now I can use it in my route right here and say that if user is found and if user is valid password with credentials password, then it's okay. Then everything's good. And I can return something like user equals email user.email, something like that. Okay, so let's have a look in the browser. I'm going to reload the page. I'm gonna 12345, so that's the correct password. Bam, and it works. It even redirects. And if you go to auth here, you can see that we have user with email. And if you go to Redux, you can see that in state we have this action user logged in, and it wrote email to it. Great, that's a good progress. But now what we want to do is when a user logged in, if credentials are correct, then we want to have a little bit more details here. We want to return email and token, JSON web token. For that, we need to yarn add JSON web token library. And inside of our model, we'll add another method. So we'll have schema methods, and let's add to auth JSON. So this is going to be just a function that will create object that we want to pass down to our client, because we do not want to pass down the whole record. We do not want to pass down password hash. And also, that's not a really cool thing to do it in the route itself. It's very noisy, and if we want to change something, we'll need to hand out it in all routes. While here, it's centralized. We know that all of this to JSON stuff happens right in the model here. So that's going to be function to auth.json. It doesn't take anything, and it returns object, and inside of it we'll have email, this email, and another one is going to be token, this generate jot token, another method. So let's define another method here. So schema methods generate jot, also function generate jot token, and we return here the jot. So we're going to import jot library from JSON web token, and here we'll have jot.sign. That's that's the method with which we create and encrypt our web token. And the first parameter is the public data. That's very important. Here is the public data. It's not encrypted. Anybody can take this JSON token, run it through the decoder, and get this data. So it's intentional. It's the public data. And we're gonna include here just the user email. So email, this email. And the second parameter is the secret key for encryption. Okie dokie. So now here, instead of this, we'll do user equals user to auth.json call. Let's have a look in the browser. So if we go to login here and we pass down correct password, bam, and it works. And you can see now we have token. So token has been generated and it was passed down to our client, and we can now use it on the client. Right now we do not do anything with token, so nothing changes on the page, but we're gonna do it in a minute. But first, you can see here that in our user model we're using this secret key, hard-coded here, it's not good. And also this thing here, MongoDB URL, also not good, because on your local machine, for example, it could be the another database name or another URL that you use, or you can be using the hosting service, MongoDB service or something like that. So we do not want to hard code this stuff. We want to keep them in separate file in environment variables. And for that, we're going to use .env. So if we go back to our project, we yarn add .env. Done. And now here we import .env from .env, and all we have to do to set it up, we call .env.config. For now that's enough. Later we will tweak it if we need, but the convention is we need to create env file in our root folder here. And now here we can define any kind of environment variables. What we want to do is we want to define MongoDB URL, and we want to define jot secret. So now if we go back to here, and we're gonna cut this thing from here and paste it into environment. And to use it, to get it from environment variable, we use process.env and then the name of the variable, MongoDB URL. Okay, and sorry, and the same thing we can do with secret token here. So I'm gonna remove it, process.env.jotSecret, and now here in env I'm gonna add secret key here. Okay, so let's have a look in the browser. Does it work? Have we broken anything? So we still have the invalid credentials. That's good. If credentials are valid, then we have a problem, and I think we need to restart the server. Let's try it again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Login, and it works. Good. So as you can see, now we can store any kind of variables that are dependent on the environment in the environment variables, which is very cool and very easy to handle. Another thing is that I promised you about the promises is here we have the deprecation, another deprecation. So Mongoose mpromise is deprecated. You should use something else. And what I use usually is Bluebird. So I'm gonna yarn add Bluebird. Also awesome promise library. Highly recommend it. And here in index, I'm gonna import promise from Bluebird. You can name it, this thing here, promise, nothing special, you can name it anything. And in Mongoose here, I'll use mongoose.promise equals promise. So this way I overwrite the built-in Mongo promise library with Bluebird promise library, which is much better. Okay, so now we have the server, right? So if we want to log in with invalid credentials, we have invalid credentials. You can see that the email is the same, but the password is wrong. So actual authentication works. And if we provide a correct password, then we update our state with data, and yeah, it's cool. And we redirected because the promise results successfully. That's good. So now what I want to do is I want to change this login to logout if I'm authenticated, and otherwise to have login, so conditional stuff. Before we do that, let's commit this change. So status, and we do user authentication. So here in our React code, let's go to home page. Here's where we have this login and logout, and I need to connect it. So now, what does it mean that user is logged in? It means that in state, in Redux state, we have user record with token. Okay, so what we're gonna do here is we're gonna connect this component with React Redux, right? And we'll have connect here. Oops. And first argument is map state to props. Let's define this function. Map state to props. It takes state and it returns the props that will be available on the home page. And one of them is authenticated. And this is Boolean of state user token. So if token is undefined, it's going to be converted to false. If it's something like any kind of string, it will be converted to true. So now we can use it. We can deconstruct it here. So basically what I'm doing here is the component takes props, but instead of using props and then props.is authenticated, I actually deconstruct it here, is authenticated. So now I need, of course, to add it to my prop types. So is authenticated is the Boolean. Good. So now I can use this is authenticated, and if user is authenticated, I want to have the button logout, and otherwise I want to have this link to login. So now if I go back, prop types, yeah. Prop types. So now if I go back and I log in, we have logout button. Cool, right? It works. But we have one issue. If I reload the page, it will go back to login, because when we reload it, as you can see here, the state is empty. We reinitialize the whole application. So we need a way to keep token, and if it's there, then we need to repopulate Redux state. And we can do it with local storage. So let's do it. So when we have here in actions, in auth, right here, we just dispatch function. Now it's not now just dispatching the function. We also need to save the token in local storage. We can create another utility function to do that, so we are not actually connected to local storage, and we can use any kind of other kind of storage, but we'll do it dirty here, local storage, and we call the name as bookworm jort, and it equals to user.token, like this. So this way we save token into the local storage when we log in. So to have a look, let's go back here. And if we log in again, here in application, you can see that we have bookworm jot token, and it is saved in the local storage. I'm pointing to my screen as you can see it. So here, yeah, we have our storage, and it doesn't matter if I reload the page, it is still there. So we can use it right now. So we'll use it in index.js file. Here we'll check. So if local storage dot bookworm jot, if it's present here, then what we want to do is we want to dispatch user logged in action. But for that we need to have some kind of a user record that we want to write into it. And one of the things is we need to have token, and the token is local storage bookworm jot token. Okay, so and now we can just use store.dispatch and dispatch user logged in action and pass user object to it. Of course, we need to import this user logged in from actions auth. Another thing that we actually need to do is to decode our jot token and get the email from there, and so we can have email as well. We do not need it right now, so we will skip it. So now, if I reload the page, if I reload the page, we have logout. We have logout because we have this token in our local storage, and when we initialize our application, we get it. Oh, we have token, and we dispatch user logged in action, and it passes this, set this token in our user, which is a cool thing. So now the last thing that we can do is to, when we click on this logout, we actually log out. And what it means to be logged out is just to remove this user record. Set it to empty object. We do not need to make any kind of request to server. So of course, if you have some kind of token expirations and you want to communicate with the server, and you want to log, for example, logins and logouts, you will do this request to server just to log that, hey, user has been logged out by himself, for example. But in our case, we just need to remove local storage, and that's it. So let's do this. So here in homepage, we have this button logout. So let's add on click. And what we're going to do is we're going to log out. So here we'll have logout, and we get this logout from actions, logout action from actions auth. And here in connect, I pass it down to wrap it into the dispatch function, logout, like this. So now, of course, we do not actually have logout, and also ESLint doesn't like when we have this shadowing thing. We have logout at the top here, and we have logout here, and ESLint doesn't like this. So we can disable this rule, or we can change it to something like this. We input all actions as actions from this file, and here we define that we define a logout to be actions logout. This way, we will not have any kind of errors like this. And yeah, here we invoke this function. So, okay, now we need to add it to props validations. So we have logout to be function. Now you happy? Yeah, now it is happy. Cool. So now we need to define it. So let's go to auth here. It's very similar to what we have in login, but we call it logout. It doesn't have to take any credentials. It doesn't make any kind of response here. So I'm going to just remove it. Request. And then in local storage, I want just to remove item that is called bookworm jot token. like this, and then I want to dispatch user logged out action with empty thing. We do not need to pass here. So let's copy this thing here, user logged out, the constant also log out. We do not need to have anything here, and we need to have user logged out constant. So let's go to types and let's add this user logged out. Good. And the last thing that we need to do, oh, and yeah, we do not need to have here user. And the last thing that we need to do is to go to our reducer. So we go to reducer user. Let's import user logout. And when user logs out, in case, we just return empty object. Okay, so let's recap what we're doing here. So here, when we click on the logout button, we dispatching the logout thunk action. So here it is, logout thunk action. We remove the token from the local storage, and then we dispatch user logged out action. User logged out action is just dispatch it, and we catch it in our user reducer and set it to empty object. So we have no token in local storage and we have empty object in this state. So user will be logged out. So let's have a look. So now if I click on this logout, bam, good, it works. So, and if you go to application here, you can see that in local storage, we have no tokens here. So now we can log in and we can log out. Good. And that's not all, because we also need to add this token to any future request, asynchronous request that we're going to do to the server. But we will keep it and we will implement it when we actually need it. So now let's commit this change. So we have login, logout. And that's it for today. Thank you very much. If you like this video, don't be shy. Just hit this like button and subscribe to this channel. Share this video and this series with your friends on Facebook and Twitter and what have you. If you want to support me, you can go to my Patreon account and make a small donation like $1, and you will get access to the private community that I want to build, where you can ask any questions. I have the priority to answer and communicate there instead of YouTube, but I'm also quite active on YouTube as well. So thank you very much for your time and have a great day.